What I learned in therapy, week 2. Hey heroes, Supa Chris here. Thank you for joining me on All These Things TV. If this is your first time, welcome. If it's not, hey girl, it's good to see you again. Here at All These Things TV, I make content geared for the millennial mother and wife to help her live her most fulfilled and inspired life while having a relationship with God. So if that's something that you're interested in, please be sure to hit the subscribe button down below. I'd really appreciate it. So I just want to touch on what we talked about previous week. And then get into this week. But before I get into that, I do want to say that what I learned and what I gather from my therapy sessions are in no way a replacement for you taking the time and setting an appointment with a medical professional, a mental health professional. I do hope that my concepts and these ideas that I'm learning for myself do help and make you feel better and help give you some coping skills and lead you on the path to mental wellness. Let's go ahead and get into it. Well, last week we talked about observing your thoughts, looking at your mind as the sky and letting your thoughts pass like clouds, right? So I'm really curious to see how last week went for you guys. So please feel free in the comments to let me know how that thought process went for you, what you observed, and how I can help the best way that I can, considering we're all in this together. No? Okay. Like I said, at the end of week 1, I did start to notice that there was a lot of negative self-talk and a lot of what we call thinking styles or cognitive distortions. So what I want to do today is share with you guys the different types of cognitive distortions that there are and give you an example and kind of how to buffer those negative thoughts with more kinder thoughts to yourself once those thoughts come to you. Now you do have to be careful, because if you're like me, once I show you the whole program, you'll want to work at it too hard to where it can make you anxious. It can make things worse. This is something that at the beginning of week 3 with my therapist, I shared, and she's like, well, maybe you should just, because I started a thought journal is what I did. After I share with you all of the exercises that come with working on the cognitive distortions, I was like, oh, I'm just going to get a thought journal. When I have a thought, I'm going to try and counter that thought with something positive. And it ended up making me more anxious. And she was like, well, maybe you shouldn't write them down. Maybe you should just, counter it in your head. And one thing I really enjoy about sharing these weekly therapies is that it gives me an opportunity to reinforce what I'm learning and the work that I'm trying to do within myself. I'm really excited about this series. I hope you enjoy this series because it's helping me, even if it's not helping you, girl, I'm sorry. But if it is, I'm very happy, I'm very excited, but this is really helpful for me because it helps me to reinforce the work that I'm doing. So cognitive distortions are basically thoughts that they would consider irrational, that influence your behaviors. So there are different categories for the different types of distortions. And just so you know, if you have these, it's totally okay because everybody has them at some point in time. It's just those people that live in the cognitive distortions that are more anxious or more overwhelmed or have more anxiety. When I looked at this sheet of paper and when I went through these cognitive distortions, I'm like, oh my God, I live here. I do this every day, multiple times a day. So just know that if a lot of these resonate with you, all of them resonated with me too. It's gonna look like I'm reading off of a paper because I wanna make sure that I'm giving you the exact information for these. The first one is magnification and minimization, and that is exaggerating or minimizing the importance of an event. One may believe that their own achievements are unimportant or that their mistakes are excessively important. An example of that is, I'm building a channel, but it's not that big of a deal. There's a difference between being humble and then there's a difference between straight up minimalizing the things that you do. On the opposite end of that spectrum, it's like, oh man, I really messed this up. Instead of saying, oh man, I messed it up, I'll do better next time, it's a situation of, oh my God, I messed it up. I don't know if I'll ever be able to recover from this. I'm a failure, and just going down that path. One way of doing that is catastrophizing, and that is basically seeing the worst possible outcomes of all situations. Me, for example, I'm posting these weekly videos. Part of me is catastrophizing because I'm like, oh my God, somebody that's an actual professional is gonna shoot me down, or somebody's gonna have negative something to say, and it's gonna really discourage me from trying to help my girls or my friends that may need it. Overgeneralization is another one. Making broad interpretations from a single or few events. An example of this is, I felt awkward doing my job interview. I'm always so awkward. Magical thinking is another one. And magical thinking is the belief that acts will influence unrelated situations. An example of this is, I'm a good person, so bad things shouldn't happen to me. Personalization, and this was a real big one for me. The belief that one is responsible for events outside of their own control. An example of this is, oh my God, my house is a mess. My kids are crying. I know they're hungry. I'm a bad mom. Instead of, well, things are a mess because we live here. The kids are young. They're hungry. Well, I'll get some food for them and I will clean up. Instead of saying that this is just the situation, you end up sticking that situation to you and making yourself responsible for the whole situation when that might not be true. It might just be life happening to you. Instead of saying, oh my God, I'm a bad mom because everything isn't pristine. Because for me, I live in a lot of black and white. I'm very black and white. And this is something that I've learned and I shared with my therapist, that I feel from my personal observation that for women of color, it's either black or white. It's either you're strong or you're not. It's either your business or you're not. There is no gray area, which makes it very hard, not really label yourself, but compartmentalize yourself in what kind of person you are. And that's not fair. I think that's something that we need to work on as a community. I think that it's okay to be in the gray. And I'm only saying that now because I'm learning that it's okay to be in the gray. I was raised in a black church and it was like, you saved or you not. This is how to prove that you saved. This is how you act when you saved. This is how you act when you're not saved. And I'm not saying that the Bible doesn't say you're hot or you're cold, understandably so. That's a whole nother video. It's really easy to look at your life in black and white and personalize things when they go wrong and say that it's your fault. You're not strong enough or you're not organized enough. Instead of saying, it's okay, there's something that I need to work on here, and it's okay to be working on organizing. It's okay to be there. It's okay to not be, it's okay to neither be unorganized or fully organized. It's okay to be in that transition phase. It's totally fine. Another cognitive distortion is jumping to conclusions. And that's interpreting the meaning of a situation with little to no evidence. I do this all the time, especially with Fago. Fago and I had gone through a really rough time and the trust had been lost. And I would call him and I'll be like, oh, he must be talking to somebody else. Oh, he must be, irrationally jumping to a conclusion, or if I call a friend of mine, or if I call a coworker and they're not available, I'm like, oh my God, catastrophizing, because a lot of times you can compile these. So I'm jumping to conclusions and thinking the worst possible situation. Another distortion of jumping to conclusions is mind reading, and that's thinking for people. So that's like, oh, she probably thinks this, so I'm gonna act like this because she thinks this way. So you're thinking for people, and that's irrational. I do it a lot. I would try and stay away. I would try and stay away from huge events where I would know a lot of people, because I would think for them. So if they were to see me, I'm like, they probably think that I'm really like this, but I'm not. They probably think this. They probably think I'm just out here faking, and that's imposter syndrome, and a lot of people already know about that. Another distortion is emotional reasoning, and that's the assumption that emotions reflect the way things really are. Example, I feel like a bad friend, I must be a bad friend. These thoughts happen to everybody. Another distortion here is disqualifying the positive, and that's recognizing only the negative aspects of a situation while ignoring the positive. One might receive many compliments on an evaluation, but focus on the single piece of negative feedback. Oh, this is a big one. Should statements. The belief that things should be a certain way. I recently left this part-time gig that I was working on, and I was really disappointed because it wasn't on my own accord. And I'm processing through the emotions, and as I was talking to my therapist about it, I said, I always want to be the person that when someone meets me, I can fix it for them. I can handle it for them. And for me to, according to this individual standards, not have met that makes me sad, because I should be the person that can fix it. But sometimes I'm not. And it's okay, because then you're putting unrealistic expectations on yourself when they don't need to be there. All or nothing thinking, that goes back to the black and white thinking, where it's I'm always like this or I'm never gonna be like this. There was a situation where Fago and I and our family went to a local Kansas City event, and I had saw someone that I had went to college with, and this individual was a part of the event, and I'm up here with these kids crying, eating food and getting stuff spilled on me, and I'm just the negative talk. This was before I was even in therapy, and I was like, you're just always gonna be a stay-at-home mom. You're never gonna be able to do things like this person. I was comparing, and I was doing the all or nothing thinking, like, you sitting up here with these kids, you always just gonna be a mama. You never gonna be able to be out here and be moving and shaking and things like that. Just really negative thinking that was not good for me. Changed my emotions, changed my behavior, and then I'm compiling it, which led to eventually my breakdown. So those are all the cognitive distortions here. The next thing we're gonna talk about and I'm gonna share with you is called a cognitive model, and these are exercises that I went through that kind of gave me an example on how to combat those negative thoughts. So there's a couple of scenarios, a couple of situations here. I'm not gonna go through all of them, just kind of give you an example, and then I'll give you an example for myself. And I would love to hear your feedback on how this might work for you. So the first situation is Jason and Kurt both receive a negative evaluation at work. Jason says, Jason has a negative thought. Jason thinks, I can't do anything right. I bet I get fired because of this. The emotion behind Jason's thought is he's depressed and nervous. So the behavior behind that negative thought also is Jason avoids his boss because he believes he's in trouble. He feels nervous the next time he's confronted with challenging work and performs poorly. Kurt, on the other hand, also received a negative evaluation at work. His thought on the opposite spectrum of that was, I guess I didn't work hard enough. I'll have to come up with a better plan for next time. Kurt's emotion was disappointed but motivated. Behavior is Kurt seeks out his boss to talk about how he can improve. He approaches his next task as a challenge and gradually improves. So the difference here is, instead of saying my boss hates me and I'm gonna get fired because of this negative review, he's like, okay, this negative review happened, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I am the negative that comes with it. I need to work on my work. Instead of saying that me, myself, I am the cancer or the negative sort. It's my work that needs to improve, not me. Does that make sense? Of course, you want to improve as a person. But in this situation, you're talking about a certain thing instead of personalizing it and making it negative to where you're unable to function properly with your behaviors. For me, as an example, like I was just let go from this position, and I could be like, wow, I'm a failure. I really maybe marketing isn't really my thing. Maybe I should pick up something else. Maybe this isn't really, maybe I've just wasted all these years. That's negative thinking, that's catastrophizing, that's personalizing, that is all or nothing thinking. And a thought to combat that is like, okay, wow, I was let go of this. I know I could have done a little bit better. I could have been a little more organized. So next time or in the future, I want to focus on being more organized. I want to focus on avoiding distractions and focus on my work instead of saying that it's because of who I am that I had this failure. Here's a chart that may help you record your thoughts and try and contrast them with something more positive, something more neutral to where you're not attacking yourself. Let me pull my thought journal out because I have great examples of this, because I did say that I was jotting them down for a little bit. So I have this thought journal here that I was working on when I first started going through this process. So it's situations, thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and alternate thoughts. You jot down what happened in the situation, you jot down your thoughts in that situation, you jot down how you're feeling in that situation, and then you jot down how you behaved. Then you jot down an alternative thought, so if something like it happens again, you have record of it. It may sound a little irrational at first to think positively because you've been thinking so negatively for so long, but once you start to do it, you'll eventually feel the weight lift off your shoulders, and you won't feel that so much pressure to just talk so negatively to yourself. Another situation was I was tired, and I was considering resting from work, and I was considering just taking a break and not finishing things because I was exhausted. And my thoughts were, I should tough it out. If I care about my business, the hustle should always be the priority. And that's the should thinking, the black and white, where it's like, I must not care about my business if I'm not working like a dog, even if that means lacking in self-care and taking some time and taking a break. My emotions where I felt pressure on myself and I felt inadequate. And I felt shameful for wanting to take a break. My behaviors were, I kept working in spite of my body telling me to give me some rest, which made me go to sleep late, which made me wake up late, and it just started the cycle over again. An alternative thought for the next time is, I'm tired, and that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and rest and catch up later. So if this is something that you think would help you, by all means, take some time to analyze the situation, analyze your thoughts, think about how you're feeling, and then think of an alternative thought that's not as negative and more neutral for yourself. So that's pretty much what I learned in week 2. It was quite a bit. Please let me know if you guys do it and how it works for you, and let's talk about it. Let's see if I can help, since we're all in this together. Until next time, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.